Some people think that we live in a universe made up of nothing but chaos. I disagree. When I look at nature, I see nothing but perfect order. But if I'm wrong, and we do in fact live in some sort of discordian universe, I still believe that we have the ability to break that chaos. We have the ability to shape the random of the universe. And that's what the subject of today's video did and does. Yes, today on Czar's Top Shelf, we're going to be listening to the title track from Phace's 2015 album, Shape the Random. I realized this afternoon that this is the third video in a row on a German artist. I didn't mean to do that. That wasn't intentional. But I figured if I'm going to do 3 Germans in a row, I might as well put on my old Atari Teenage Riot shirt for this video. I can't really listen to Atari Teenage Riot anymore. They're definitely not a top shelf band, but I figured what the heck, why not? Put on the shirt. So as for Phace, he came on the scene around 2003, if I'm not mistaken. In the early 2000s, I really wasn't listening to much electronic music. A lot of the stuff, like right around the turn of the century, just became extremely glitchy. Like it was a trend to make music that sounded like a series of mistakes. Just to give you an example, like what I'm talking about, Autechre. I was a huge Autechre fan throughout the 90s, but they sort of just right around 2001 or so, 2002, started releasing music that was clearly random. I mean, just to tie back into the topic of this video, their music sounded like a series of mistakes over and over again. Random algorithms, like they would create an algorithm and then just set it to randomly generate a sequence and then release it. And unfortunately, it fooled a lot of people into thinking that there was some masterful scheme behind all of that. Well, I guess it was kind of a scheme, but there was no like schematic to the music. It wasn't sequenced or arranged. None of it was intentional. And it just really annoyed me. And they kind of led the charge with that sort of thing, and it caught on, and most of the other electronic musicians I liked followed Autechre, and I just got out of it. I was listening to other music in the early 2000s, not electronic music. So when Phace came around in 2003, I completely missed them. In fact, I didn't even know about Phace for like 20 years later. I just got into him a couple years ago. I don't remember how I found out about him. I don't even remember what the first song was I heard. It was probably a recommendation on YouTube or something like that, but I really liked it, whatever it was. And then I quickly went in and checked out all of his discography and found out that the guy's been releasing tons and tons of music for the last 2 decades that just completely flew under my radar because I wasn't paying attention. So as I was learning about Phace a couple years ago, I just dove into his discography and I bought up everything that I could find online. I don't have any physical releases from Phace. I don't have a CD or a record to hold up for you right here like I normally do in these videos because I've purchased all of his releases digitally. The guy runs a couple record labels, so pretty much everything he's done is out there available to purchase online. And I recommend you do that as well. I'll put a link where you could buy this album, Shape the Random. I'll put a link to that in the description so you can go out and buy it too. You really should pay for the things that you appreciate. I don't have much to tell you about Phace as a person either. Like a lot of other electronic musicians, the guy doesn't do a lot of interviews. His personal life, his background, even his influences, I don't really know. And I didn't dig into any of that because I kind of prefer not to know. There's certain musicians where I want to know everything about them personally. I want to know what they think about this, that, or the other. With electronic musicians, their music speaks for itself. This kind of music is all about the experience. There's never any real depth and like meaning or purpose to the music other than to experience it. So the artists behind this kind of stuff typically, you know, have that same way of conducting themselves in the music scene too. So I'm not going to tell you anything about Phace like I would in some of these other videos, but I could tell you this, I love the guy's music. He has a unique combination of like drum and bass with acid, maybe early techno, even sort of, sometimes I hear little vestiges of like, I don't know, Kraftwerk or something like that, where like electronic music that wasn't rock type of music, but was before techno. You know what I mean? Like there's bits of that in this guy's compositions. It's just a general mix of stuff. Some of his music does have sort of like a headbanging feel to it. I think the song we're going to listen to now has a little bit of that going on. It's a very pounding song. All of that's very cool. And then the other thing too is his production is very digital. He probably does a mix of digital and hardware synthesizers, but I think the vast majority of what he's doing is digital. And that's kind of the reason I got out of electronic music too. That whole glitch thing from the early 2000s, that was all software-based music. And I just had a bias against software-based music for the longest time. I got way back into hardware synthesizers myself, and the last 3 albums that I put out were all recorded onto a cassette from hardware synthesizers. Before that was cool, by the way. You know, that's a hip thing to do now. I was before all that. So I don't know. When I came across Phace a couple years ago, all of the bias I had against like software-based electronic music kind of just wore off, you know? And I heard it fresh. I heard it unfiltered, and I really, really liked it. I think that he maximizes the potential of software, especially in around the 2015 era. And that's why I think this is some of his best work. And then on top of all that, the guy sprinkles in little bits of humor. There's just a unique style to Phace that I think probably has been copied by other artists in the last 10 years or so. But just with like the little vocal samples and some of the bits of sequences, the little nuances that he puts in, there's just bits in his songs that just kind of make you smile, which is unusual because sometimes the song can be quite dark. There's a mix of humor and darkness throughout. So it's kind of interesting for that reason. So Shape the Random. This song and this album really lives up to the title. If you think about electronic music is all about shaping the random. In the old days, when you'd get a synthesizer and you turn it on, you may not get any sound whatsoever. If you fiddle with some knobs and some sliders, you might get some sort of buzzing sound or a white noise sound, whatever. And your job as an electronic musician is to then take that bunch of nonsense and turn it into something sensible, something that's usable. You have to make it playable on a keyboard, for example. You would adjust the filter and the envelopes to give the sound some character and make it your own. You know, nowadays you download a synthesizer and you've got thousands of patches at your disposal, all these presets. But the fundamentals of electronic music, you didn't have that luxury. It was all about making the sound. And I think those fundamentals are practiced by the best electronic musicians of the current era. You know, Phace could just use a preset sound from whatever software synthesizer he's using, but he chooses not to. You could hear in all of his music that he's making his own sounds 99% of the time. And even if you're thinking of like contemporary electronic musicians and stuff, and like all of the music from the last 30 years is way more rhythmic than melodic, right? But even the rhythm sections of modern electronic music is all very much a matter of shaping the random. Those individual drum sounds or samples are shaped. Like if you download a breakbeat or record a breakbeat sample, and you take that, you know, what is it, a couple bars of drums, and you slice it up into individual little millisecond samples, you're going to then sculpt and shape each one of those individual things, then rearrange them and put them into some sort of context where they have a different meaning than they had initially. All of that whole process of making music out of breakbeats is a matter of shaping the random, because before you shape them and put them back into the order that you choose them to be in, you just got a big pile of nonsense, you know, dissonant breakbeats. So, and then the way that all of the rhythm bits of modern electronic music, the way that those bits interplay with the melodic bits that are there, that's again another layer of shaping of the random. So all music has this to an extent, but I think electronic music, because it's all about creating sounds from nothing and sounds that do not exist in nature. That's the other thing that kind of I marvel about with electronic music. That's what got me into electronic music in the first place, is the sounds that you hear, you can't replicate with anything else. You know, a car's engine doesn't make that sound. There's no animal in nature that makes that sound. You can't bang on something with a piece of wood and get it to make that sound. Other types of music, even something like an electric guitar, the vibration of the strings, you can relate to something natural. Electronic music, by definition, electronic music is supernatural because the sounds do not exist in nature. So all of that is why I like electronic music, and I like artists like Phace that are so good at applying the fundamentals of electronic music to something contemporary. He really does shape the random. So let me shut up for a moment now. Let's listen to how Phace demonstrates that concept of shaping the random. So 45 seconds into the song, and it really just starts with a series of random bleeps and blops. It sounds like it's trying to become something, but doesn't know how to do so. That surging sound, that is like the formulation of the music. I hear that, and it's like he's stirring up all those random blips and blops from the introduction of the song. Like he's putting them into like a cauldron or something, and he's stirring it up. Or like he's whipping them into something. Or makes me think of like a potter's wheel, like spinning around, and he's sculpting a big lump of nonsense, of useless blob of nothing, sculpting it into something like a vase that could actually be have some sort of practical function. Really, really cool. It's just surging up, and then you're going to hear now he creates something from that blob of nothing. Here we go. Got to stop it for a second. That run of riffs and patterns, that's what makes this top shelf. It's like every few bars there's a different movement. It's almost like a different technique that he's executing with each little section of that arrangement. I imagine like if you were to be dancing to this or something like this, it's like each one of those sections, it calls you to do something different with each movement, with each technique, with each sequence of shape, with each shape, basically. He's like making a shape with each one of those sections. Your body would have to replicate that shape in some way. Really, 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 really cool. It's like as a listener, he's kind of telling you, you're the listener, you're obligated to oblige in that manner. And then there's like this little, man, I don't know how to say it. There's this little juggling sound. It's like an in-between. It's like an announcement of the next shape. I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like an engine stalling, or I like a tripping sound. It's like a dig 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 dig. I'm not doing it justice, but you know what I'm talking about. It just comes in at just the right time to announce what's happening next. So all of that is just so perfectly structured, so perfectly organized, so perfectly German. I mean, this is so obviously a German produced track. I absolutely love it. Let's listen to a little bit more. I gotta remember to pause it because, well, I just have to. Let's listen to a bit more. So in this section here, like he's taking each of those moves or shapes or techniques from the previous section, and he's organizing them into a very distinctive, repetitive pattern. And I think the importance of that, the importance of repetition in any sort of music is to demonstrate intention. It reinforces the fact that this is not random, that what he did with all of those different movements and techniques was not by accident or inconsequential. That was intentional because he's taking those same sounds and now he's spreading them out to form a bridge to a breakdown that's going to come up shortly. Again, also very functional, very German. Stopping it, right? Stopping it at just the right moment. All right, that vocal sample is so distinctly Phace. That's what I'm talking about, with the little bits of humor that he sprinkles in, oftentimes with those very, very characteristic vocal samples like that. Then he gets back to the randomness after that, and then we've got that other surge coming now. That surge is just queuing you up for the reprisal of the series of movements, of shapes, of techniques that are going to come. So here we go. I'm going to just let it play out from here to the end without any interruption. This is the reprisal of the different shapes of the random. Well, the random has been shaped. There's not much more to say about Shape the Random or Phace's music. Electronic music in general, it's all very subjective. I probably talked more in this video than I should have because this music is all about the listening experience more than anything else. But I do want to thank you for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I see you in the next episode of Czar's Top Shelf.